Watching wrestling on Saturday mornings, which is when they showed it at the time I was growing up, Saturday mornings or Saturday afternoon with my dad. Dad was a house painter by trade, but on the weekends he was a motorcycle racer. And so he would spend a lot of weekends working on his motorcycles, but he would start on Saturday morning and take a break to come in and watch wrestling and then go back out to work on the motorcycles again. So we always watched wrestling together. Joel Goodhart had started the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance. And in my opinion, TWA was designed to bring in a different product than what the Philadelphia fans saw on television. Definitely it wasn't Hulkamania. It was a lot closer to the NWA, but it had a very distinct Memphis wrestling and Mid-South Bill Watts promotion feel to it. It was a little more hardcore than the NWA on television, and it was definitely a lot more hardcore than the Hulkamania era on WWF that we were getting on television at the time. And Joel would run local shows using just TWA talent, or maybe someone who had a name that would be a bit of a draw. But 3 or 4 times a year, he would run the Philadelphia Civic Center, and he would bring people in from all over that the standard Philadelphia wrestling fan did not see on a regular basis. And that drew people in. And I think that was the difference of the TWA compared to the major promotions at the time. He tended to go out of his way to please his fans. TWA had a big show plan for the Civic Center, and the main event was Nature Boy Buddy Landell, who was the TWA champion at the time. And he was going to take on, returning to the ring at the age of 72, the original Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. And through Joel, I had become friends with Buddy Rogers. And Buddy gave me a call one day, and he said, "Hey, is there something going on up there?" And I said, "No." "What do you mean?" And he said, "I've heard that there's some financial troubles going on up there." And I said, "I haven't heard it, not that I know of. I'll let you know what I can find out." And within days, Joel, on a Saturday morning on his weekly radio show, announced the end of TWA. Closed the doors right there on the radio. And that show never happened. With that, Todd Gordon, one of the financial backers of the company, felt that that left a hole in the wrestling business of Philadelphia. So he got together with Larry Winters, who was a wrestler with the TWA, and Bob Artis, who was also involved, I'm pretty sure, financially. And they created Eastern Championship Wrestling. And we were doing pretty good. The business of tape trading had a lot to do with the growth of ECW. For those who don't know, at the time, videotapes were the only way to see what other promotions and other companies were doing around the country and around the world. So ECW put on a handful of shows when we had moved into Viking Hall, which is now the 2300 Arena, or the ECW Arena. And we had some pretty intense matches with guys like Abdul the Butcher, Kevin Sullivan, Stan Hansen, Terry Funk, of course. And that got us some notice in the world of tape trading. And I think that's where we kind of grew from. We got great coverage from magazines. So that brought people in from outside of the Philadelphia area that could drive to the events and see what was going on. And it just became word of mouth, and people just started coming from all over the place. At one point, there would be Japanese wrestling fans doing tours on the East Coast, and they would do it so that they could come to an ECW show. I really don't know all that much about what exactly happened, but Todd moved on. I'd had enough with running a company. He had a business of his own outside of wrestling, had a young family, so it was probably time to move on. And he did, and Paul stepped in as owner. He, at the time, was already working as the booker and the promoter, so it was the logical step. It was getting a little rough. I was working behind the scenes also in the promotions end of the company. So I was leaving my house on a Tuesday and coming home on a Sunday, and checks weren't always there when we needed them. So it was a bit of a struggle, but we kept going through. Money would show up when it could. And so it was just a struggle until those last couple of days when we had our last weekend of shows. A lot of the guys, and I'm one of these guys, who probably knew, refused to believe it, and hoped that something would happen to save the company. Of course, that didn't come through, and that was the end of ECW. It was a tragic end to a short success, but it was a hell of a ride.